The old school, surrounded by thick trees, always seemed a little creepy to the children, especially the part of the building where the old locker room was located. The walls there were covered in streaks of moisture, and the air smelled of dampness. Finally, in the center of the locker room, there was a row of metal lockers. Most of them were peeling with rusty locks that had long since lost their function. However, one locker stood out. It was perfectly clean, as if someone had carefully looked after it. But the strangest thing was that it was always locked. "Nobody opens it," said Tommy, the main leader among the children. "Even the cleaning lady doesn't touch it." "Maybe there's something valuable in there," Lily suggested, examining the lock. "Something strange," added Ben, the youngest of them, with a slight tremor in his voice. The idea of opening the locker quickly took hold of their minds. They often gathered there, arguing about what could be inside. Some talked about old diaries, forgotten textbooks. Others whispered about scary stories connected with the school. "We should open it," Tommy said one day, crossing his arms. "Are you sure?" Lily asked hesitantly. "Of course. What could happen?" he smiled. In the evening, when the school was empty, the children decided to go back to the locker room. Tommy was holding an old crowbar that he had borrowed from his father. 2, 3, he said, pushing the crowbar against the door. The lock gave way with a terrible grinding sound, and then the door slowly opened. It was dark inside, and nothing could be seen at first. "What's in there?" Ben whispered. Lily shone the torch from her phone into the locker. Inside was only an old school uniform, neatly folded, and something that looked like a leather notebook. "Is that all?" Tommy asked, disappointed. But as soon as they got the book out, tension filled the air. A quiet but distinct knock came from the depths of the cabinet. The children froze at the sound. Tommy, who was holding the crowbar, took a step back, his face turning white. "Did you hear that?" Lily whispered, her voice shaking. "It's just an echo," Tommy muttered, but he didn't believe his own words. A dark shape slowly began to emerge from the darkness of the locker. It was shapeless, like smoke, but the outline of something resembling a human figure could be discerned in it. "Close it! Close the locker!" Ben screamed, backing up against the wall. But it was too late. The darkness seemed to be pouring out of the locker, filling the space of the locker room. The lights on the ceiling began to flicker, and the air became icy. "Run!" Lily shouted, and the three of them rushed for the exit. They ran out of the school, but the feeling that someone was following them did not leave them. Each of them turned around, but there was no one in the hallway or behind the doors. The next day at school, nothing had changed. The locker was closed again, as if it had never been opened. The children kept quiet about what had happened, but strange things began to happen. Ben was the first. He told Lily that he had heard rustling outside the window during the night. "I looked," he said, his face deathly pale. There it was. It was standing on the street and looking at me. The next day, Ben did not come to school. The teacher said that his family had urgently left, but no one knew where. Created to get rid of both of them at the same time. "Disappeared," Lily whispered to Tommy. "I think it has to do with what we let out." Tommy waved it off, but that evening he himself felt something strange. On his way home, he saw a shadow following him along the sidewalk, although there was no one around. That night, he woke up with the feeling that someone was standing next to his bed. When he turned on the light, something dark flashed in the corner of the room for a moment and then disappeared. The next day, Tommy also disappeared. Lily was left alone. Every one of her friends had disappeared, and the school was shrouded in an oppressive silence. She tried to tell the adults, but her words sounded like childish fantasies. No one believed that the locker and the strange silhouette had anything to do with the disappearances. But Lily knew the truth. Every night, the darkness grew closer. She saw it in the reflection of the windows, in the corners of her room, even on the street. It was as if the shadow was waiting, unhurriedly, but with each passing day its presence became more and more obvious. At dawn, unable to bear the horror any longer, Lily decided to return to school. She was overcome by the feeling that it all had started there, at that locker, and only there could it end. The locker room greeted her with cold. The locker was locked again, but now there were strange marks on its door, as if claws had scratched it. "This is all because of us," she whispered, coming closer. "We weren't supposed to open it." Her hand was shaking as she touched the door. As soon as she did, the locker opened on its own. Inside was no longer the old school uniform, only thick darkness that swirled like a living vortex. In the depths of the darkness, Lily saw her friends. Their faces were blurred, distorted, as if they were part of this darkness. They did not move, but their empty eyes looked straight at her. "Help us!" Ben's voice rang out, but it sounded distant, as if it came from another world. Lily realized that there was no turning back. She had to stop this, even if it meant sacrificing herself. "I know what needs to be done," she whispered, stepping into the locker. As soon as her body crossed the border of the darkness, the door slammed shut. The room was filled with silence. The locker looked normal again, locked, as if it had never been opened. Lily was part of the shadow now. Her face flickered among the outlines of darkness, forever locked inside. Exercise, combat-ready procedure. The school went on as usual, but some kids said that at night they could hear whispers in the locker room and see eyes watching them from the depths of the locker. "It's true,"